All right, so I've been tossing and turning all night. I woke up this morning, I didn't know what to eat, and I noticed that I had some rice that I had warmed up last night, but decided not to eat, probably because I know that if I eat at night, it will wake me up and I won't be able to go back to sleep. So even a semi-conscious version of myself realized don't eat at night because it's bad for you. But I finally rolled out of bed and went into the kitchen, looked at all my fish tanks, and I thought to myself, I haven't felt like doing a YouTube video in what feels like an eternity. Most of my videos are pre recorded because I just don't have the energy or time or inspiration. Because despite what many of you think, this is a talent to be able to make this content. Being able to create these videos takes a person who's not only worked in the same industry for 25 years, but also has 4 college degrees. This isn't the type of video that you're going to get from your run of the mill Gen Z or your average person. They take a lot of inspiration and thought and just plain guts to say the things that I do. And that's why when I saw this particular comment this morning, it inspired me to make a video because it was entitled The 7 Day Career. Because most jobs aren't designed for you to stay longer than 7 days. We live in a society where jobs really don't want you. They want your labor, they want your soul, but they don't actually want you. Because if they wanted you, they would pay you a living wage starting at about $150,000 a year. Anything less than that, you're going to scrape by for the rest of your life like I have. Because I don't make a living wage. In fact, it's plainly obvious yesterday I had to check my bank account to buy a few fish before I came home because my depression was so bad that if I didn't do something for myself, uh, it probably would have ended badly. Worse than, 20 beers in one night. But here we are, yet again, trying to figure out why we're still here. Why does the proletariat even exist anymore? You guys are out there working and starving, working and not being able to afford a home, working and maybe living on the street, working and living in your car, or worst off, you're working and you don't even understand where you are. I've seen this at my job at McDonald's. I've seen people who come in and don't really understand where they are. In fact, yesterday I was talking to one of my coworkers for most of the day, and she told me how awful the workers are. In fact, I walked up to the front of the building yesterday, and I was helping someone with the digital camera while I made fries, of course, right? I'm working the fry later while I'm working on complicated problems with detection of a digital camera. And one of the other low end managers walks into the room and she just looks at her and she says, "This is my last day. I refuse to do this much work for this little money." And it wasn't one of those situations where you're like, oh, yeah, she must be kidding. No, she was finished. I refuse to work this hard for this quality of life. And that's what Americans are saying all across this country right now. If you haven't seen the Epic Economist's last video, go watch it. It's this channel in a nutshell. I've been doing this channel for longer than the Epic Economist by far. I've been on YouTube for 2 decades. And yesterday I saw the face of someone who just gave up in real time. And I told her a couple days ago, it's like anyone that goes out to their car and sleeps in their car during the day and takes their meals inside of their own personal vehicle in the parking lot is no longer working at this job. And I've heard this many times at McDonald's. Some of the girls will go out and get their groove on with customers for the right price in the parking lot. Yeah, it happens, people. It's not a foreign concept. These girls aren't making enough money inside making the French fries. There's more money to be made outside in the short term. And so when I told her that no one that goes into their car to take naps and breaks and eat their lunch is going to be here very long, she just looked at me and she's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Because it's simple. I've been working a long time. Anyone that needs to unplug so hard from work that they have to go sleep in their car is no longer going to be working there. And you know how I know this? Because I've seen this for years. Because Gen Z likes to do this. They like to go out into their cars because they don't want to feel the oppression from work all the time. And this is their way of dealing with it. But if you have to deal with it that hard, chances are you're not going to show up tomorrow. I never expect a worker to show up tomorrow. When they show up, I'm kind of like, oh, really? I've seen this pattern so many times when I worked at Walmart, when I worked at Fry's, when I worked at the fast food places, when I worked in a warehouse. It's the pattern's the same. Human beings eventually get to a point where they're like, if I keep working here, I'm going to end up getting murked. So with that said, let's get into the 7-day career. You ever notice how minimum wage jobs expect you to be a fast learner, but they're paying you like you're a remedial kindergartner? Yeah, I told my coworker this the other day. I run an adult daycare center. One wrong move and you're out. Like you got a waiting list of desperate people who can flip burgers at NASA speed. I lasted 7 days, 7 days of training, which is really just code for figure it out or get fired. Welcome to the new American dream, a career that dies before your paycheck even clears. They're not careers. This is what I don't get about people. What I don't understand about Gen Z is they think they have careers. You don't have a career. You have a short term job that doesn't like you, that doesn't want you there, and wishes that they didn't have to pay you anything. That's what you have in this current work economy. No one wants to keep you there. Unless you're an executive or higher, no one wants you working there. Your boss treats you with disdain, your coworkers don't like you, even your significant other tolerates you because they need you paying half the rent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. And just like most relationships, they turn into not even good roommates. They turn into a person that you just have to tolerate because you can't afford to live by yourself. I recently got rid of someone in my life that I'd known for many, many years for that exact same reason. You get to a point where you're laying right there on that couch and you look at them and you no longer are attracted to them. All you see is the ugliness about them. All you see is their failures. All you see is every bit of that person that you chose not to acknowledge. That's corporate America and you as a worker. They don't like you. They don't like the way you smell, the way you look, the way that you behave. They don't like the clothes you wear. They don't like the way you walk. They don't like the way that you look down when you walk past them. And that's every single job you're ever going to have. I don't know why it turns like that so quickly, but I've seen it. I was at Insight for 6 months, and I would see this every single day at work. Managers that were disgusted by their workers. And the worst part is, this is the best that they could get. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a salesperson, and she's just like, I don't understand where they find these people. And I just looked at her and I said, McDonald's can't afford to be judgy when it comes to people. Bad breath, terrible haircuts, awful personalities. Guess what? For 7 days, you have a career here. Let's get into talking point number one. So let me get this straight. A company pays you minimum wage, but expects you to learn like you're training to defuse bombs in a war zone. They call it not learning fast enough, but what they really mean is we didn't feel like training you. 1 week on the clock isn't onboarding. It's hazing. And if you stumble, you're tossed out and replaced by the next poor, pathetic piece of crap human being that they scooped off the street and is willing to take the job. That's not a career ladder. It's a corporate meat grinder with a now hiring sign on the front porch. I agree. I've seen that. I've walked into a building for years at a time that had a now hiring sign. And I've seen how cutthroat these people are. The second you walk in, they're going to measure you up, try to determine how desperate you are, because desperation is the key factor in hiring the proletariat to do anything, From stocking shelves to running a register to dancing on a pole, they need to make certain that you're desperate enough that you might show up tomorrow. Because at least when I worked at Walmart, the number one factor on whether or not an employee was even going to stay an entire 4 hour shift. How bad do they need money? In fact, I was talking to Mello about this the other day. I believe it was Monday morning. I woke up really depressed and I thought to myself, what if I didn't have the money to buy fish food? What would I do in order to make $8 right now if I needed $8? And I was driving the car when I was explaining this to Mello, and she said, you know what? If you can't afford to feed your fish, I'll take your fish. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's exactly what the government needs to do with the proletariat's children. Just take them away. They can't afford to feed them. They don't like them. They don't need them. And as someone said in the comments, I believe also the same day, is that people are just slurve. You know what a slurve is? It's the larva stage of a slave, of a future slave. And one of my McDonald's coworkers just recently had a slurve. And straight up, you understand, both the parents work in food. One works in a restaurant, the other one works at a sit down restaurant, and the other one works at a fast food restaurant. What chance does that slurve have of having a decent life? I'll tell you this much, absolutely none. And that's the world that we've created for people. It's the 7 day career, it's the 7 day slave. Whether you're slaving at this plantation, that plantation, you're never, ever going to have any sort of life. I had a 4 day weekend this past weekend. What did I do? I drifted off into a stupor and tried not to think about my surroundings. As I've told you guys many times, I try not to think about my past. I try not to think about the present. And I definitely don't want to think about my future. And if you care about your own mental health and not going postal, you'll do the same thing. Because thinking about where you're currently at makes you sad. Thinking about where you're going to be tomorrow in your 7 day career makes you even more sad because you're going to be looking through the same jobs you've been staring at for the past 10 years on Indeed. There are no new good jobs, right? We all know that. There aren't good jobs for the proletariat. There's just you, the minimum wage job, or the minimum wage plus job that still has you eating garbage and wondering when you might actually be able to afford something you actually want. That's the great thing about being a slave or being a slave. It's like you never get anything you want. You don't get the job, you don't get the house, you don't drive the car you want, you don't have the free time. You have nothing. And somehow, again, I know some of you hate this expression, you will own nothing and be happy because your job expects you to show up Monday morning at 8 a.m. with a big smile on your face, like you actually had something to do over the weekend or actually had a couple bucks in your pocket. Like I said yesterday, I had to check my bank account to see if I could afford a $3 fish. And when I looked and I'm like, well, it's almost Thursday. I get paid on Friday. Maybe if I save up my pennies, I can afford something halfway decent on the weekend. And that's how we spend our lives. Always wondering if we're going to get to that next just-in-time paycheck, knowing full well that financially we're in a crisis. Mental crises are directly correlated with financial instability, work instability, and whether or not you're going to show up at your job and there's going to be gone out of business sign. That's what happened to me when I worked at Walmart. It's like one day you come into work and they're telling you everything's fine. The next day you come in and there's a store closure sign on the front door. No one told you. You know why? Because you're not important. They don't care whether or not you have a job. And that's the way that I've seen things work out at nearly every business that I've worked at that's gone out of business. When I worked uh, at Allied Waste Corporation in the mid 2000s, that's what happened. Suddenly you walk into work and they're like, yeah, we're going out of business. You have work for this amount of time. But between you and that date that they tell you, it's already over. You're just sitting there keeping that seat warm. All right, let's move on to talking point number two. Isn't it funny how minimum wage jobs demand surgeon level precision, pilot level speed, and therapist level patience, all for less than what you spend on groceries in a day? Imagine if every industry fired people after 7 days for not being capable of doing the job. Hospitals would be staffed by interns, pilots would be replaced mid flight, and someone still learning the controls. But in retail or food service, that's just standard practice. I would say that standard practice has become universal practice. Like I've said, I've worked in the same McDonald's industry my whole life. And I've seen people who show up who shouldn't be there. People with certifications and network, security, a comp TA certification. These people are completely worthless. They don't have the experience to do the job. And once someone asks you to do something and you say you don't know, saying you don't know on the job is saying, please fire me. Because saying you don't know how to do something means you can't take it upon yourself to learn to do something. And I'd say that corporations absolutely hate that about their workers, regardless of what department you work in. Because I spend a lot of time talking to the salespeople, like an absolute ridiculous amount of time. Because where does your revenue come from when you're Evil Corp? It comes from sales, subscriptions, any way that you can stick your hand into the pocket of the proletariat and pull out that shiny dime. So they have to be the most skilled at removing your money. And the only way they can do that is by spending years and years and years of learning how to pickpocket people. Because that's what corporations do. Every day they scheme not only to take it out of their customers, but also their employees. I was watching Anywhere Claire the other day, and she was talking about what it was like working at Amazon, at the Amazon warehouse where she worked before she became homeless and started living in her car. And she said that they purposely would put the time clock in a place where it took you 10, 15 minutes just to get on site and then walk to the time clock to punch in. And corporations love doing this, especially to their lower end workers. The lower end, the closer you are to minimum wage in corporate America right now, the worse you get treated. The more you feel like your 7 day career is probably going to turn into a 1 day career because you're absolutely the bottom rung of society. And the worst part is that you feel it. Every morning that I wake up and I'm the bottom rung of society, you look in the mirror when you go to the bathroom and you see, you know what? Look at your tired eyes. Look at that bald spot. Look at your face. Look at your total lack of enthusiasm for going to work that day. Because your 7 day career is, it's like a clock, right? It's ticking backwards. And you're just like, oh, I may have something right now, but it's probably not going to last. Why? Simple relationship. They're not interested. You're not interested. So the 7 day relationship comes to an end very quickly. All right, let's jump into my closing because I'm not going to have time for talking point number three. So, yeah, my career was a whole week long, a week of running on empty, smiling for customers who don't care, and managers who see you as broken part to swap out. But here's the joke, it's not me that failed. It's a system built on disposable pieces of crap that we call people, where loyalty is a punchline and survival is the only promotion you'll ever get. The 7 day career isn't a tragedy, it's the business model. And if that doesn't make you laugh, it should at least make you cry. How much longer are we going to keep playing along with the 7 day career? And I'll tell you this much as a person who's been working since I was 16 years old, It doesn't get better. It doesn't change. Things, no matter where you go, it's like the exact same people, except the characteristics of the person just change, or their features may change. Today you're working for a guy with red hair, tomorrow you're working for a bald guy, and the day after that you're working for a guy with a comb over. But it's the same. Same wages, non-livable, same attitude, same people that hope you don't come back tomorrow. I've seen that my entire life. In fact, I used to have a general manager when I worked at Walmart who kept asking me, it's like, why do you keep coming back, MillennialSteam? And I'm like, unfortunately, I have to keep coming back to this crap job because I have rent to pay. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And they just look at you. You know, the worst part is the management looks at you and like, yeah, same for me. I got all them kids with all them different women. I got to keep paying child support on 5 to 10 kids. I drive a piece of crap Kia car that you see out back. I always asked him, the same question all the time. It's like, why do you drive such a crappy car? And he just say to me the same thing: child support. I drive $1,000 car, even though he made $130,000 a year as a general manager plus bonuses, and it was because he had kids. If you want to play, you got to pay. And that's something I just never understand. It's like 15 seconds of fun can equal 18 years of child support. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because those kids are going to keep calling you for the rest of their lives. And you may not even like them. You may not like your kids. You may not like the woman that easy baked ovened your kids, but you're stuck. And the only way out, as I always say, there's either hope or the rope. That's it. But with that said, I got to start getting ready for work. And I'm going to throw up some pictures in the background. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And hopefully you guys leave a comment, like, subscribe, toss Steam a buck for his inconvenience. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.